And good afternoon. It is Friday and it's time for our Lunch and Learn. Now today we're going to be talking about melatonin and the dangers that are in melatonin. Now this is something that kind of drives a lot of people crazy, is that there are things on the shelves at the health food stores and the grocery stores and the big box stores that may not be exactly what you need. And so I know that melatonin is something that everybody knows about, but not everybody understands how it works in the body. And when you start manipulating that with synthetics, then you're going to have a lot of different problems. And so we're going to be talking about the increase in the use of melatonin with our children and how it can cause seizures, it can cause death, it can cause tremors, it can cause all kinds of things. And so we don't want to do that to our children, and we don't want to do that to ourselves. So we need to be really, really wise. Melatonin is not just something, oh, well, the body already makes it, and so it's just okay to take. It's just not like that. So we're going to get into this report, and we're going to get some new facts and some new understanding, and maybe we need to do something different with our children, all right? So there is a new study in the Journal of American Medical Association Pediatrics that suggests that melatonin consumption among U.S. children and adolescents is exceedingly common. About 1/5 of U.S. children use melatonin for sleep, and some parents begin administering it to their children by the age of 1. Now, I'm just not in favor of this. I'm not in favor of children using melatonin at all. I'm not in favor of children manipulating their hormones at all. I'm just telling you that. Are there some things that we may need to do so that the hormones function the way they need to? There might be. There are some holistic things that we can do, but that's not the topic that we're looking at right now. So the United States has seen a rapid rise in pediatric melatonin use because of sleep problems. The sleep problems, the clinicians attribute these sleep problems to increased mental illness and screen use. Now, you don't have to be, a rocket scientist to know that children are on their screens way too much. We go into a restaurant and instead of the family, we'll say it's a family of 4, a mom and a dad and 2 kids. Instead of everybody talking to each other and learning and enjoying and building those relationships, every single one of the 4 people is on a screen. You might walk into a restaurant and you'll see 2 adults having a conversation, but the children are on their screens. And so the screens have become a electronic babysitter. What that does is it messes up their brain. Now, when I was doing my Master's of Education work years and years ago, my thesis topic was on attention deficit disorder and ADHD. So when I was doing this research, what I found was back in the old days, when I was a little girl, my mom would take me to the library in the summer every 2 weeks. We'd check out 4 or 5 books, maybe 10 books. I was an avid reader. I've always been an avid reader. And we would come home and we would read and we'd take them back and we'd get new and that kind of thing. There was a summer reading program. As the advent of the internet and all of that has come about, screens are very popular and they're very addictive. But what those screens do, and you can just look at your own screen, what those screens do, you've got flashes of color, you've got movement, you've got all those things that are not linear. Reading is linear, left to right, top to bottom. It's linear. When you're looking at a screen, it's not linear. So it actually induces, or maybe not causes, attention deficit, but it doesn't train the brain to be disciplined. So if the brain is not disciplined, then you're going to have ADD, ADHD problems. Now, in some of my clinical work, we have been trained and taught that the human brain, the mature adult human brain, cannot hold onto a single thought for more than about 5 minutes. And so that is because even as adults, we have not had the discipline to train our brains. And so when we're letting these electronic devices babysit our children, then we are encouraging them not to train their brain. And so we want to train the brain because, as these clinicians in this report state, mental illness and screen time is what's leading to this insomnia situation with our children. Now, according to the National Institutes of Health, this was in 2017 through 2018, so this was a few years ago, about 1% of children and adolescents less than 19 years old consumed melatonin. Now, JAMA Pediatrics authors compare that with their own research, and they find that the use has risen from 1% to 20%. In other words, that's a 20-fold increase. And parents surveyed also reported that their children take the supplements on an average of 2 to 5 times a week. Some even take it daily. So that's a huge increase. This is 2024. The previous survey was in 2018, 2017, 1% of children. Now, just a few short years later, we've got 20% of our children doing this. Up to 20% of children have taken melatonin in the last 30 days, and 2 to 5 days is what is on average. So, use of melatonin has surged from 2012 to 2021. And the poison centers in the United States have seen a 530% increase in melatonin ingestion in children. Now that's a lot, some of which have resulted in hospitalization, according to research from the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. Now, morbidity and mortality, that means these are people that died, right? So they're finding this melatonin component in these children that have died. I don't want my children to die. I don't want your children to die. I have sleep issues. I'm just going to fess up. I have sleep issues. I do not take melatonin. Why is that? Well, let me see if I can put it into words that you can understand. You've got several neurotransmitters in your brain. You've got, it's a shortened GABA. It's a very long word. GABA, serotonin, dopamine, acetylcholine, and then you get all the way down until you've got your melatonin. So your melatonin is at the bottom of the food chain. If you feed from the top of the food chain, it'll trickle down through the neurotransmitters and you'll make enough melatonin. So there's a lot of things. Melatonin is made by the pineal gland. The pineal gland is sometimes referred to as your third eye, and that's not because of mysticism and voodoo or anything like that. It's because it's made out of the same tissue as your optic nerve. So it needs sunlight in order to function, and you get it when you go outside and you see the sun in the early morning, late afternoon. You don't want to do it in the bright heat of the day. When we use fluoride, when we have fluoride in our environment, it calcifies the pineal gland. When the pineal gland is calcified, it may not do what it needs to do with the melatonin. So we don't want to be just supplementing with melatonin when we need to work on the body to get the body to function the way the body needs to function. So a lot of people think that kids do not have sleeping problems, and that is absolutely not true, says sleep medicine pediatrician Dr. Galen Perry, and that person is CEO of the Perry Center of Pediatric and Adult Sleep Care. Kids have always had sleeping problem, and these don't differ much from the adults. COVID has also caused sleeping problems. About 25% of children suffered from disrupted sleep before the virus. That jumped to 46% in 2020. Now, why was that? Because of anxiety. Everything changed. We couldn't go to school. We couldn't go out. We had to wear masks, all those kind of things. And so that increased from 25% to 46%. So that's almost, 100% increase there. Just as stress, anxiety, and depression can cause insomnia in adults, the same can occur with children who are worried about things from day to day. So this is schoolwork, peer pressure, social media interactions, and that kind of thing. Now, if I had young children in the home, I do not. I have grandchildren, but they're not in my home. But if I had children in my home, they would not be on social media as children or as young teenagers. Why is that? because there is so much social pressure. And I just don't think a developing mind needs to be associated with that and fixated on that. So just, I guess, be glad you're not my child, right? Teenagers are also overcommitted in their school activity, which inhibits their ability to get in bed on time. Additionally, homeschooling during the viral incident increased children's screen time. Why is that? Because that's all we could do to school the children, because the schools were closed. Certainly in our, area, schools were closed. Now, one of the things I just want to segue in, because not a lot is known about this, or maybe I don't know a whole lot about this. I know that you're supposed to wear EMF protection when you're in front of the screen, but I didn't really realize that the blue light that you get from the screen damages your eyes. So when I was at Utah last week, that's why we didn't have Lunch and Learn last week, because I was at Utah, they talked about this formula that is an eye formula, and it says it helps protect eyes from the blue light that the screens give. So if you are going to be on your computer, I'm in my office, I'm on my computer all day long. So I got a bottle for me. I got a bottle for my husband because he's, in his office and all that kind of stuff. So we're doing this because we don't want that blue light to degenerate our eyes. One of the reasons that they think that macular degeneration is on the rise is because of the blue light. So we're talking about screens. I know I kind of did a little segue there, but just everybody needs to know that blue light really can interfere with your eyesight. The doctor goes on to say there's a significant problem with electronics in general, to the point that some parents have really lost control. He says parents get up in the middle of the night or early in the morning before school. They get on their tablets or phones to play or to do video games. The pediatrician, Dr. Derek Hussman, says that he believes screen use is the main cause of sleeping disorder in children. So parents, if you're giving your children melatonin, you might want to just take away their tablets, their phones, for 2 or 3 hours before bedtime, because the blue light interferes with sleeping. Additionally, autism and ADD, ADHD, whose rates have been growing among children, are also associated with the difficulty of falling asleep. So the rise in the sleep problems have caused the parents to opt for the cheap and available melatonin. You don't have to have a prescription. They're available in liquids. They're available in gummies. So they're very easy for the children to take. The children like gummies. I am going to just say I like gummies until I found out that they were made out of petroleum products. And when I found out they were made out of petroleum products, I quit buying them. I quit taking them, because guess what? Petroleum goes in my vehicle, but it doesn't go in my body. And so we need to, for those reasons, we need not to buy the vitamins that are in the gummy form unless they are certified 100% organic and they're not going to be made out of petroleum products. So Dr. Perry says the majority of parents that come into my clinic have at least tried melatonin, or the child is already on melatonin, either per recommendation from a general pediatrician or they decided to do it on their own. From 2016 to 2020, the sale of melatonin increased by 150%, according to the CDC Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. Beyond its use as a sleep aid, melatonin is also used for anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, and neuroprotective effects. Now, I'm not so sure. I haven't researched that. But if it's something that the body makes in minute quantities, and we are amping it up, that's not going to be a good thing for our bodies. So I'm just kind of concerned about that. I do know that cancer patients, because they are in so much pain, they cannot sleep, they make a very high dose of melatonin for them. Again, I would probably choose a different option, but this is what they do. Melatonin, as I said, is a naturally occurring hormone that the body produces, and it regulates your sleep-wake cycles. It stimulates light suppresses melatonin, whereas darkness stimulates melatonin. So if you are in front of a screen 24/7, you're not going to be able to get that pineal gland to be working because you're too stimulated by the light. And so that's something that we need to do. We need to, and I know nobody's going to go to bed when the sun goes down. It goes down, and I lived in Scotland, and it would get dark at 3:30 in the afternoon. There was no way I was going to go to bed at 3:30 in the afternoon. However, we need to have good regular bedtimes, and we'll get on into that in just a minute. Melatonin supplements are advised to be taken 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. Now, I know some people, they give it to their children right before bedtime, and it takes 1 to 2 hours to get into the system. Excuse me, my throat's a little dry. If taken later in the night, that window of opportunity has been missed. This is from a neuropsychiatry consultant for the Danish Health Authority. She says melatonin's effects only last for about 2 hours. It's going to facilitate falling asleep quicker, but it's not going to be around long enough to impact sleep quality. She says parents typically report some short-term benefit when administering melatonin, but as time passes, the supplements do not work well and the dose may need to be increased. Dr. Hussman says, it used to bother me a lot when I came across those patients who have been on it for months and months. I asked them to try to wean their kids off, but there are some cases when they try and it's not particularly successful. When prolonged melatonin use leads to tolerance, such as with other sleeping pills, remains up for debate. Some people say it does, some people say it doesn't. Some studies show that it does, some studies show that it doesn't, so we don't really know. However, the doctors do not recommend supplementing with melatonin for healthy children younger than age 3 because difficulties falling and staying asleep in these children are almost always behavioral in nature. All right. High melatonin levels have also been detected in deceased children. I can't imagine anything worse than having a child that has, passed before you. And in these cases where melatonin is involved, that's very, very sad indeed. Dr. Mohammed Rishi at the Indiana University Health Institute wrote, I suspect the biggest issue is easy access to melatonin and its ill-perceived safety. A North Carolina autopsy report detailed 7 cases of suspected melatonin involvement in pediatric death. One case involved a 3-month-old girl routinely given 8 to 10 daily doses of 5 milligrams of melatonin supplements as a sleep aid. Now that's way, 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 way too much. I mean, hopefully nobody out there does that. Most of the melatonin comes in 3 milligrams. I know you can get 5 milligrams. I know you can get 10 milligrams. And I think I've even seen 30 milligrams. Please, 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 if you're going to supplement your children with melatonin, do the lowest dose possible if you're going to do that. I hope you don't do that. As I said, I have sleep issues. I do not take melatonin because I know how it works in the brain. I'm going to feed the top of the food chain, not the bottom of the food chain. Doctors don't know why melatonin supplementation is associated with death. It should also be noted that deaths from melatonin only make up a small percentage of all melatonin poisoning reports. So there's a lot of reports of poisoning, not that many of death, and that's good, but I don't want my children poisoned either, and we're going to talk about that. Let's see, I want to get to the part here. Dr. Rishi argues that melatonin is a drug, meaning it changes a person's mental and physical state, and therefore it should be treated as a drug. What you make in your body is a natural hormone. What you're getting off of the counter of your big box store is not a natural hormone. It is a synthetic drug. So the common side effects of melatonin include dizziness, excuse me, daytime sleepiness, low blood pressure. It can also cause nightmares, increased bedwetting, and agitation. Long-term side effects are still unknown because there have been no long-term safety studies. One concern is that melatonin supplements may delay puberty because melatonin levels in the blood typically start to decrease prior to the onset of puberty. When going through the literature, this is a quote, we found that there is a general underreporting on safety and that the certainty of evidence is low. The current evidence shows that children and adolescents are likely to experience non-serious adverse events instead of the serious ones. Yet, quote, we don't know the actual extent of this. And why is that? Because no one has undertaken a study to test these children to see what's going on with them when they're taking the melatonin. Overdosing and consuming contaminated products are established risk of taking store-bought melatonin supplements. Because melatonin is sold as a supplement, it doesn't have the same regulatory oversight from the USDA, the FDA, as the over-the-counter medications, all right? Dr. Rishi said that contamination and viability and dosage are rampant, and that's really what I want to talk to you about. Now, we do have a clinic. We do recommend supplements. We do recommend homeopathic medicines. We do recommend diet and lifestyle changes. We do recommend all that kind of stuff. All of the products that we get directly from high-end suppliers, and we know that it is third-party tested, not only to make sure there's no contaminants in there, but to make sure that what actually is in there is to the degree that they say that it's in there, okay? So these particular supplements that you're getting at the big box store, and they're cheap, they're absolutely dirt cheap, they are not being tested for that, and they are contaminated, and the actual dosage is not what's necessarily is on the bottle. The doctors go on to say that children require a very low dosage of melatonin, about 0.05 to 3 milligrams. But doses of supplements can vary even from batch to batch. A Canadian study examined 30 commercial melatonin supplements, and it illustrates such discrepancies. Melatonin content ranged from less than 80% to almost five-fold of what was listed on the label. So let's say, just for argument's sake, let's say it was 100 milligrams. 80% less would be, quite a bit less, and then 5 times 80 would be quite a bit more. So just think about that. Because these supplements are just over-the-counter supplements and they're, from all over the place, they're not necessarily reliable in the dosage. So you may think you're giving your child a 5 milligram tablet, but you could actually be giving them a 25 milligram tablet or something even worse than that. So you just want to make sure that if you're going to do this, you want to get it from a reputable supplier that's been third-party tested so that you know that it's good. Now, some of you are saying, oh, well, I get all my stuff at this big grocery store that's well known for being holistic. Well, yes, well, let me tell you about that. From third-party testers, when they go in and they test their stuff, they find that I think, it's been a while since I saw this report, but I think that only about 10% of what they had was really what they said they had. That means what was listed on the bottle was not what was in the container. So you can't really trust the big name brands. You just can't do that. So in contrast to melatonin, which is generally assumed to have a high safety profile, serotonin is known to cause neurological effects, including seizures, tremors, and even death at toxic levels. If the melatonin supplements contain serotonin, and a lot of them do, yes, I think I missed this part. Even among supplements of the same lot, the differences could vary as much as 465%. That's a lot. That's a lot of variation. There's no standardization in that. Now, you may have heard me talk previously about standardization. I don't buy standardized herbs in the main. And part of that reason is, we'll say, what's a good example? We'll say your aspirin, right? The aspirin that you buy at the grocery store. It comes from a plant, the chemical mimicking comes from a plant called aspergina. Aspergina has other things in there that keep the herb from causing ulcers in the stomach. When the chemists take the analgesic out of that, they standardize that, they lose the buffering agent that keep that herb from hurting you. Does that make sense? So whenever we don't want standardized herbs that don't have all of the components, but we do want melatonin, okay? We only want it to have melatonin, and we want it to be at the milligram dosage that it says it is. So we want that to be standardized. We don't want it to have the serotonin in there. Another potential concern is that melatonin supplementation may also cause the body to convert melatonin to serotonin. This has been shown in animal studies. Therefore, ensuring a standard dosage of melatonin can be important. Dr. Perry recommends pharmaceutical-grade melatonin for short-term use. Unlike store-bought supplements, pharmaceutical-grade melatonin is held to the same standard as FDA-regulated drugs, which means that the melatonin must exceed 99% purity and cannot contain any fillers, binders, dyes, or any inactive ingredients. And that's what you don't want. When you're looking at your supplements, you don't want to have a lot of inactive ingredients. Therefore, with prescription melatonin, your contamination factor is low and the variance of your milligrams is very, very low. All right? Excuse me. So you want to rather get your body to make the right amount of melatonin at the right time. All right. So one of the biggest problems of taking melatonin is that you're taking it at a steady time, maybe 24 hours a day, and that's not how it works in the body. All right. There's a difference between taking supplements and letting the body regulate itself. The biggest difference is that the melatonin is not present in our systems at all time. There is a rhythm to how it is secreted by the pineal gland in the body. The timing of when you take the melatonin supplements can also greatly impact other bodily functions, including body temperature, blood vessel tone, secretion of other hormones. And since melatonin functions as a master hormone, research has shown that melatonin supplements can cause a higher peak of melatonin in the body than is normal, right? So for children, insomnia is very much a behavioral problem driven by poor sleep habits, says Dr. Perry. He's got more than 30 years experience with dealing with children as a sleep specialist. The majority of children have behavioral insomnia or restless legs, she said. Restless leg syndrome is often related to iron deficiency, and supplementation with iron can help. Now, again, this is kind of not so great with children because you want to get an organic iron, yellow dock, burdock, rather than some kind of a synthetic iron, because it's going to cause constipation. It's going to cause all kinds of things. We don't want to do that. Behavioral insomnia includes sleep association insomnia and limit setting insomnia. So let's just explain what these are. Limit setting insomnia occurs when parents are unable to set limits because of giving in to the child's bedtime opposing tactics. So haven't we all just seen that with our children and our grandchildren? The tactics can include sobbing, outburst, asking multiple questions, throwing things, making unnecessarily frequent trips to the bathroom, asking for drinks, asking for extra hugs, and who can resist that, right? And claiming to have one more important thing to say before they go to sleep. Sleep association insomnia occurs when the child needs the parent to lie beside him in the bed. This also refers to when a child wakes up in the middle of the night and needs the parent to come back to his bed and sleep with him so he can go back to sleep. The doctor says by starting a regular bedroom routine as a family and setting good boundaries, both the children and the parents can have a good night's sleep. Screen addictions can also lead to insomnia, and parents are often unaware how the screen impacts their children's sleep. Parents have no idea that the children are getting up to get the tablet and are looking at their phones under the covers. Now, one thing you might want to do, and I know this is tough love because it's going to affect you too, you might just turn off the router at a certain time. And that way they have to read a book, or they have to play with their brothers and sisters, or they have to clean up their room, or whatever other activity they need to do instead of just being on their screens. He says parents set a very important example in modeling sleep habits for their children. Often changing a child's sleep behavior involves changing the entire family's sleep behavior. Now, I know here in the clinic, people come in and I ask them what their regular bedtime is, and they'll say, oh, they don't have one, or oh, they regularly stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning. Not a good idea. The body is regulating itself, and the body repairs in the middle of the night. So we want to make sure that we go to bed at a decent hour and we get 6 to 8 hours uninterrupted sleep so our body can repair. It's not the same to go to bed at 1 o'clock and wake up at 10 o'clock. That's just not the same. That's not how the body works. If you're getting to bed at 1, you're probably not getting to sleep until 1:30. And so you've missed your 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. You've missed those 4 hours of repair for your body. And so if we want to live long, live strong, then we've got to be really, really smart about it. So hopefully, after all this information, you know that it's not a good idea to supplement your children with melatonin. There are other things that can be done. There are other things that are very natural. There are calming herbs. There's magnesium. There's all kinds of things that you can do in order to get everybody to go to sleep. One of the easiest things to do is to get a habit and to restrict screen time for about probably 2 hours before bed so you can get those little ones to go to sleep on time. You're going to be happier for it. They're going to be happier for it. Their behavior in school is going to improve. It's a win-win all the way around. So it is Friday, and my weekend watchword is always self-care. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of the people that we love. We need to take care of the people that we surround ourselves with. And I want you to be back with me next week as we explore another exciting topic. Thank you for liking, commenting, sharing, all the things that we do so that Facebook knows that we're providing value to the community. So thank you for honoring me with your presence, and I will see you next week.